What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40k. In this one, we will go into the scouring era of Warhammer, where the Primarchs have basically been scattered, and they don't really know what to do after the death or the dying process of the Emperor of Mankind after the Horus Heresy. This is a very interesting era of time because it's like the bridge between Warhammer 30k and Warhammer 40k, and there's a lot that happens here. One of the things that happens is the battle between the Lion and Luthor, one of his sons. So with all the speculation of Lionel Johnson coming back into the fold of Warhammer 40k, let's go ahead and look at the reason as to why he's currently asleep within the rock. The Primarch faced his former brother and knew that he was lost to him, that the dark power had destroyed the honorable man he had once been. The Primarch was a living god amongst men, but Luthor had been elevated by the Chaos powers to be his equal in almost every way. The two warriors fought in a battle the like of which had never been seen before, and has never been witnessed since. The ancient home of the Order was reduced to rubble in their epic battle as the Dark Angel fleet continued to bombard the planet, flattening the citadel of every remaining monastery. Caliban's surface began to crack and heave under the constant shelling, the fury of the Dark Angels blinding them to the devastation they were wreaking on their own world. Only the Master of the Dark Angels knew more than this, and they tell it to no one. However, the ancient Codicillium Astartes Mortis, or Book of the Angels of Death, describes the battle between Luthor and Lionel Johnson. They fought with superhuman strength, equally matched in all but purpose. But eventually Luthor stumbled, his neck exposed to his brother's righteous blade. As Luthor fell, Johnson raised his sword high, but even in his rage, could not bring himself to deliver the killing blow. Luthor had no such qualms, and as Johnson hesitated, he unleashed a terrible, sorcerous attack that mortally wounded the Primarch. Luthor towered above the Lion, and as he watched the Primarch struggle to stand, his face contorted in agony. The veil lifted from Luthor's eyes, and he realized the full horror of his betrayal. Not only had he forsaken his friend, his legion, and the Emperor, but he had betrayed the nobility within himself. He cast his weapon aside and collapsed next to his Primarch, his sanity shattered by the enormity of his actions. All around, Caliban convulsed as the dark powers realized that they had once again been thwarted. If accounts are true, their titanic rage tore a rent in the very fabric of space all around Caliban, and a warp storm of utmost fury spewed forth from the rent to engulf the planet. A swirling vortex of unleashed warp energy swept across Caliban. Furious planet-wide earthquakes racked the surface of the planet, and it began to split open. The relentless bombardment by the Dark Angel's fleet had already weakened the planet, and to their horror, it broke apart and was no more. The debris of its death spasms sucked into the maelstrom of the warp. The Dark Angels maintained that their ruined fortress was empty, but the Codicillium Astartes Mortis states, when the Dark Angels descended to the dead rock, they discovered Luthor, curled in a fetal ball, endlessly repeating the same phrase. Over and over, he told the Dark Angels that the Watchers in the Dark had taken the Primarch, and one day they would return him to forgive Luthor from his sins. The Space Marines searched the drifting asteroid, but could find no trace of their Primarch. Lionel Johnson had vanished. So this is the lore between two brothers fighting: Luthor, who was an adult turned into a Space Marine, which happens very, very rarely, and the Primarch of the Dark Angels, Lionel Johnson. This is considered old lore, because clearly we've seen the Horus Heresy move and push the lore into a canonized state, and we've also seen them traverse the Siege of Terra, and it's almost done. So with the final book, The End and the Death Volume 2, we will then be led to the Scouring era of 40k, and we'll probably touch base on this story between the Luther and his fallen son, and we'll probably get some more inklings as to what exactly happened, like what transpired here, because it's a very similar storyline from Horus fighting the Emperor, but you have a Space Marine fighting his Primarch, and it all involved the Chaos Space Marines and the Fallen, and how this blemish on the Dark Angels could not be spread out into the truth of the Imperium. And so because of this is why they've been very secretive and why they've only wanted to hunt the Fallen. The Fallen are the blemish on the Dark Angels, and because of this, Luther has been locked up. In the current lore, he's escaped. And with the most recent of lores, we've got Vashtor fighting on the rock, trying to get into the Chamber of Secrets, so to speak, to get his last piece of the fragment of the Silver Key. However, all the lore, all the rumors states, or kind of leads in one direction, and that's the return of the Lion. The return of another Loyalist Primarch to help Guilliman fight against the forces of Chaos. Because currently, they've got Angron, they've got Mortarion, and they got Magnus, all Demon Primarchs, alongside Abaddon the Despoiler and all the other forces of Chaos, and the Imperium only has one Primarch currently out there fighting for the hope of humanity. So clearly the scales are tipped in the favor of Chaos, and hopefully the Lion will make his triumphant return to fight and help out Guilliman. Hopefully. Because like I said, when it comes to the Dark Angels, it seems that they don't really want to help out. They'd rather focus on their own internal struggles, such as finding the Fallen, interrogating them, and fighting more Fallen. And it's very interesting to see how they would accept help, but then as soon as they don't need it, they're quick to turn on their brothers, as we saw with the whole Ultramarines aiding them during the attack from Vashtor. And then as soon as it was over, they said, hey, you better get off or we're gonna fire upon you. So really interesting lore. I can't wait to see what happens in the official canon, but as of right now, we see another instance of a Chaos Space Marine being elevated to Primarch levels. Again, you could say that the Primarchs are stronger than Chaos elevated Space Marines, because Lionel Johnson did have the upper hand. The only reason why he faltered was because of his emotion. He knew Luther was his brother, and he knew he couldn't, bring him down, and he hesitated, and that's what allowed Luther, or should I say, the Chaos Gods, to fell a demigod, as we've seen here. And because of this, he's been forced to sleep and recover, and hopefully we get to see him sooner than later. But enough about my ramblings. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think is going to happen with the Lion? Will he make his triumphant return in 40k? Are they just giving us this lore to kind of push us in one direction and then blindside us with something else? So what do you guys think? And as always, thanks for watching, thanks for liking, subscribing, commenting, and I'll see you in the next one. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll catch you then.
Oh, I guess that's what my